Hey everyone, RogueGold here, welcome back to The Division 2, and today I want to dive into the Brooklyn DLC, at least my predictions for it. Now that we're moving into the latter parts of January, we are in that territory where news on next season and the DLC that is supposed to be delivering with it, fingers crossed, could drop at any time. Whether that is news on a PTS, a reveal stream for the DLC itself, I don't know what they might have in store. That said, before any of that begins, I figured it would be fun to put out my final predictions. Predictions on what exactly this DLC will shape up to be. Even though we have known about this thing's existence for nearly 2 years now, exact details are still quite scarce. So, in this video I want to use what limited info we do have to inform my best guesses for what we will see from this DLC in terms of its content, pricing, and more. That all being said, my guesses on this are as good as any of you who are watching, so once you hear my final predictions, I would love for you all to head down to the comments and leave your own thoughts and predictions on what the Brooklyn DLC might contain. Before we dive in, if you end up enjoying the video and you want to stay tuned to know the moment that official info on this new DLC drops, then I sincerely hope that you will consider clicking that subscribe button, as I will be the first to let you know the latest. With that said, and without further ado, let's get into this. Alright, as we start going through this, keep in mind that my predictions are just that. Predictions. I do not know anything more about the Brooklyn DLC other than the limited info that has been released online and in interviews, so as goes without saying, what I cover in this video could turn out to be somewhat familiar to the final product. It could also be completely off base. We will have to wait and see. Additionally, there will be spoilers included in this video for the game's ongoing story to a degree, in the sense that I'm going to use the established lore that we've gotten in these past few seasons of the game to try and inform where the narrative side of this DLC might go, so be warned there. As far as what information we do know about this DLC, and what bits of detail I'm using here to guide my predictions, there's really only two main sources. The first was the DLC's reveal at Division Day back in 2023. The presenter there labeled this drop as a story DLC containing new open world zones and new main missions. So there's that basis to go off of. But additionally, Yannick, the game's creative director, did an interview with Game Reactor back in April of 2023 following Division Day, and he elaborates a small bit on the scale that we might be able to expect with this content. I'll link the full thing below if you want to check it out, but here were his comments.
Is this like a mini expansion for the Division 2?
Well, it's a DLC, and yeah, it is probably going to be one of the biggest updates we've done at least in recent history of Division 2. As you said, there's going to be a whole new package, a whole DLC package that's going to be available for players, and that package it's going to be a story DLC in sense of new main mission, new map, new content, new stories to discover. It's not the size of a Warlords of New York expansion. That's why we're calling it a DLC and not an expansion. But it is it is us trying to go back to creating story content and new spaces to explore and new maps that you can go to and just discover new stories and new main missions. So that's really exciting for us to be able to do that.
So, a few interesting tidbits there, but the guiding comments that I think are most noteworthy is how he clearly differentiates this DLC drop from an expansion like Warlords of New York, emphasizing how this DLC is very story-focused, and saying that it is a smaller package overall. I'm going to keep both of those pieces of information in mind as I give my predictions. Now, the one disclaimer that I do want to give is that, like stated, these comments were back from April of 2023. That is a long time ago. Now, we know that the Brooklyn DLC got delayed by 1 year from 2024 to 25 due to the devs' decision to pursue the Project Resolve update for the game, and in theory, that delay would just be to give them enough time to finish and ship the originally intended content and vision for the DLC. However, given it has been so long since we heard any sort of detail about the DLC, I do just want to throw out the possibility that plans could have changed, scope could have changed, maybe certain ideas got tweaked or added in. I have no idea, or no way of knowing if that would be the case. But given the ever-changing nature of game development, that is always a possibility. For this video and my predictions, however, I can only go off of the information that we do have, so let's get into those predictions. Beginning with what I assume the most amount of players are curious to find out about, exactly what kind and how much content are we set to get with this DLC? Well, my thought on this has always been not to go too wild with hope. I know there are a lot of you out there who are wanting and hoping for a sprawling new open world, a 10 mission long campaign, new activities, game modes, all that stuff. As cool as that would be to see, we simply don't have any information that has pointed us towards anything like that being a reality. Again, what we do know is that this DLC is story focused, there will be new zones and missions, and that it will be a smaller package than Warlords. Now, notably, I don't think by Yannick saying that this will be a smaller package, it necessarily guarantees less content in terms of map space and mission count, but moreover that it wouldn't have the same breadth of features that an expansion offers. Things like a level cap increase, a new progression feature like the Shade Watch, I'm not really expecting us to see any of that. But as far as the zones and missions, personally, I expect us to see 3 open world zones and 4 main missions. Still a decent chunk of content, a bit smaller than Warlords had with 4 and 5 respectively. I just think that is a bit more of a realistic expectation to have given the much smaller development team that has been making this DLC compared to Wony back in the day. Getting more specific though, if we want to tie in some narrative predictions here, overall we know that this DLC is going to tackle the ongoing conflict between ourselves, Keener and the Resistance he's building, and Natalia Sokolova, Calvin McManus, the Black Tusk, and the Hunters. For reasons yet unknown, Brooklyn is going to become ground zero for that war. We also know that Keener has, for some time now, been building a base of operations for that resistance within Brooklyn. So my guess is that just like Haven in Lower Manhattan, this settlement will be our new social space and hub for the DLC content. And I think it is going to be situated somewhere in a nearby part of Brooklyn to the original tutorial zone that we had back in the Division 1. A lot of people have had their theories and guesses as to if we will revisit those few blocks that we had access to back then. I think that the devs will bank on that for sure, for nostalgia purposes if nothing else. So that's my guess, is that this first open world zone we visit will contain the new Boo, and that it will have part of, if not the total area of that Division 1 tutorial zone. After that, like I said, I think we will see 2 additional pretty sizable zones, and that those will then extend into never-before-seen areas of Brooklyn deeper into the city. Given the comments made and the information we have, I think that will be the majority of this DLC's content. The new zones, a new settlement within them to guide everything, and there will probably be some side content and mini objectives fit in between the new main missions, which are obviously the cornerstone of new content here. To populate the new open world zones, I expect a fairly similar structure to what we are familiar with in DC and Lower Manhattan. I think we will get new control points for each of these zones, along with the usual assortment of territory controls, convoys, and other activities. As much as I would love to see it, I just don't think they're going to pull off adding in an all-new faction for this release. I hope I'm wrong, but I predict that the enemies that we do face, whether it be in missions or open world content, will consist of the Rikers, Cleaners, and the Black Tusk. That is partially backed up by lore drops that we've been getting in these recent weeks, but I also think it just makes sense. I do, however, think that we will see some minor innovations made to try and freshen up combat there, right? Obviously, we have been fighting these factions for years already and know their tactics, but whether it is stuff like incorporating the souped-up Black Tusk Warhound variants that we've seen in some of the seasonal missions, like Sparkles or Chimera, whether it's giving all of the Cleaners that we fight access to the purple burn accelerant seen in the Paradise Lost incursion, making some unique boss fights and mechanics. In some fashion, I do expect to see some changes made to the combatants we'll face so as to bring some degree of freshness into that experience. Alright, well that encapsulates the majority of my predictions on things, right? 3 open world zones, 4 main missions, a new settlement, remixed enemies and factions. However, I do believe that we will get one surprise. What that surprise will be, I do not know. Maybe that's why it's a surprise. No, but look, as I mentioned before, I've seen people for months now, really ever since this DLC's announcement, speculating some wild stuff, saying they think it will bring a level increase, Gear 3.0, a new Dark Zone, a new dedicated game mode, endless amounts of stuff that again, I would love to see, but I just don't see fitting the bill for a story DLC that is supposedly smaller than Wony. That said, I do think there will be one surprise. Whether that is a Dark Zone, which would be wild, or something smaller like some new Hunter puzzles, or a new system or feature specific to the open world content in Brooklyn. In some form, some fashion, I think there will be one solid surprise. We'll see if that pans out or not. Alright, and then the last thing to cover and predict is the pricing. We've had the discussion before. No, it has not been outright confirmed that this DLC will be paid content, but I think deep down, we all know it will be. That is just how these types of content releases are, and look, so long as there has been effort and passion put into this DLC, I'm happy to pay for it. The question is how much. Now, I will be basing my prediction here based on the amount of content that I just laid out, right? In theory, if they somehow manage to deliver 5 open world zones, 10 main missions, and Brooklyn's own dedicated game mode, then yeah, I would expect it to be a bit more expensive in comparison. However, I'm looking at this through the lens of a story-focused DLC drop that will be a bit smaller in scope than the Warlords Warlords expansion from 2020. Now, this is a little bit tricky, because had this released back at the same time period as WONI, then I would have said $20 USD would be a fair price point, right? It is smaller, therefore not hitting the same $30 mark that WONI did, but it is not 2020 anymore. Not only is Ubisoft more strapped for cash these days, but inflation has also occurred. Since Warlords came out, the standard price of a AAA game in the industry has gone from 60 USD to 70. So with those factors in mind, I will go out on a limb and say that I think the Brooklyn DLC will be priced at $30 USD. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that it is 20. Like I said, that would be my guess if it weren't for any other outstanding circumstances, but I'm guessing $30 is a bit more likely. I don't see it going beyond that. If it does, then I think a lot of people will have a lot to say about that, myself included, especially if the content offerings are less than what Warlords had. But like the rest of the video, that is all entirely speculation. We will wait and see what plays out. My friends, that is going to do it for my final predictions on the Brooklyn DLC. Like a lot of you, I presume, I am very excited for this new release for the game. It has been a long 5 years since our last major story and world edition, and I am truly stoked to be able to just explore some new areas, see what's in store. So, making a video like this is a lot of fun for me personally, but I very much hope you all enjoyed watching, and as I said at the start, I would love for you all to leave your own predictions for the Brooklyn DLC down below. Whether they might somewhat align with mine, whether they are completely and totally different, let me hear it. Can't wait to read them. That is going to do it for me today, folks. Stay tuned for us to hopefully get official DLC news soon, and I'll see you back here for it. Thank you all so much for watching. RogueGold. Out.